Hi, everyone. My name is Pastor Alice, and I am giving a midweek word on navigating transitions. By transitions, I mean anytime your life changes in some way, anytime you have gone through a phase of life and it ends, and you find yourself in a new one. This could be starting a new job and ending an old one. And you have to get to know new people, new schedules, new tasks. Um, and it could also be something like starting to have children for the first time, or your children moving out and going to college or to their own apartment, and having an empty nest of a house. It could also be the death of a loved one or parent, which is made even more complicated by the heaviness of grief that surrounds you. Um, and often, when there's a death of a loved one, especially when it's too soon, and you're forced to go through a transition much quicker than you thought, that can be also very difficult. Transitions are hard. Often, we may find ourselves being hard on ourselves because we are having a hard time with a transition, especially if there is not the loss of a loved one involved, and we seem to maybe not be sleeping as well, or we're having trouble handling little stressors in life. Um, we find ourselves to be more irritable, and we wonder, why am I having such a hard time with this? Well, it's because transitions are difficult. Um, when we have new routines, um, when we have any sort of change in relationships around us, your kids are leaving to go move to their own place, for instance, that's a change in your relationship and a change in your own home. And so they are difficult. So I think the first step in navigating transitions is being compassionate towards yourself, being kind to yourself. If you find yourself having any sort of difficult emotions, instead of being hard on yourself, you could say to yourself, you know, yes, Alice, or your name, this is really hard. And it's okay that I'm having a difficult time right now. If you feel a sense of overwhelm, you can put your hand on your chest and just say, it's okay. You're going through a hard time right now. This is normal and expected, and it's okay that it's difficult and I'm having a hard time with it. Just giving yourself as much compassion as possible can really help, um, with any difficult emotions that you're experiencing, because you resist them a little bit less. Because that's another difficult part of transitions, is resisting them and all of the stress that comes with that resistance. Um, and I've read recently that suffering is pain that we experience times resistance. So, what really makes us suffer the most is not always the pain that we are having, but our resistance to it. And when you are going through a transition, especially one that you didn't plan, that you didn't ask for, maybe unwelcome, um, the more you resist the pain of that, the more that you may suffer. So it's really, really helpful to give yourself kindness and compassion in those transitions. It's also helpful to look at our scriptures and see all of these different characters, fathers and mothers of our faith, who went through transitions themselves. I think of Abraham and Sarah, or Abram and Sarai, because they went through so many different transitions of leaving their homeland, and moving in a time when, when you moved, you didn't have letters, you didn't have phone calls, you didn't have video chats. You left. You would not see your loved ones again. Just imagining like all of the difficulties that come with that kind of transition. I also think of Elijah, the prophet, and Elisha, his mentee, the prophet, and the time in 2 Kings 2 when Elijah is preparing for his own death. And Elisha has to reckon with his mentor being gone. So I'm going to read that for just a few verses. This is 2 Kings 2. Now, when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven by a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel." But Elisha said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of prophets who were in Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he said, "Yes, I know. Keep silent." Elijah said to him, "Elisha, stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they came to Jericho. The company of prophets who were at Jericho drew near to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he answered, "Yes, I know. Keep silent." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me to the Jordan." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So the two of them went on. 50 men of the company of prophets also went and stood at some distance from them, as they both were standing by the Jordan. Then Elijah took his mantle and rolled it up and struck the water. The water was parted to the one side and to the other, and the two of them crossed on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I may do for you before I am taken from you." Elijah said, "Please let me inherit a double share of your spirit." He responded, "You have asked a hard thing. Yet if you see me as I am being taken from you, it will be granted. If not, it will not." As they continued walking and talking, a chariot of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them, and Elijah ascended in a whirlwind into heaven. Elisha kept watching and crying out, "Father, Father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." But when he could no longer see him, he grasped his own clothes and tore them in two pieces. So this story shows you a major transition in someone's life. And we see several things here that can help assure us when we're going through our own transitions. Now, I don't think that many of us, when a mentor is leaving us, that they would leave in such a dramatic kind of, I would say traumatic even fashion of chariot of fire and horses of fire, and your mentor is being taken up into a whirlwind into the sky. But we see Elisha go through this transition, I think, quite beautifully. Even with the company of prophets who are being very unhelpful. Perhaps they thought they were being helpful, but reminding Elisha of his own transition. And, you know, that is probably something I would not recommend us to do for others, to remind people, "Oh, you're going to have an empty house soon," or, "Oh, do you know that your mom will be leaving you soon?" I mean, what a horrible thing to say. But Elisha handles it with grace. I imagine he said maybe something stronger than keep silent, but he remains respectful, at least in our text. But we also see him right before Elijah is taken up in this whirlwind. We see Elisha ask for a double share of Elijah's spirit. He knows he will need his strength. He knows he will need his gifts for prophecy. He knows he will need Elijah's closeness with God, and he asks for that. He prepares himself for this transition. Um, it doesn't mean that it really makes it any easier, but I think asking for that and preparing for that was Elisha's best way of ensuring that this transition could go well. I think that's a valuable lesson for us to learn. When we are going through transitions, knowing what we need and asking for it, while that can be tremendously difficult for some of us, I think it is so helpful when we are going through these changes in life. Um, like I'm thinking of when Pastor Morgan moved to her new house, and her and Ian created a sign up sheet for childcare to help them when they pack and when they take things to the new house. I think that's a beautiful example of, you know, knowing what you need when you're going through some sort of change, and asking for it. Um, or say you know you're going through a stressful time with your kid leaving for college, and you could reach out to a few friends and say, hey, in the next few weeks, it's going to be a difficult time for me. I was wondering if I could set up some coffee dates with each one of you just to be able to talk to someone about it, maintain my sanity. Maybe you ask people to help prepare your house for this transition or prepare meals for you. Maybe you ask your pastors to help set that up for you. Um, I think it's tremendously wise to ask for um, that kind of help in a transition. So, wrapping up here, I know this was kind of um, baptism by like fire hydrant, just a real quick midweek word on transitions, but remembering to be compassionate with yourself. And, even if that's like just rubbing your chest and reminding yourself that this is difficult. I'm experiencing pain right now, and I'm going to be compassionate towards my pain. And also remembering that, like Elisha asking and preparing himself for this transition, we can do the same. Knowing what we need is often the hardest part, but taking the time to figure that out is tremendously helpful. I hope this was a helpful, reflective midweek word. And after this, we will have some music for you to reflect on, and just continue reflecting on transitions you've had, past and present or future, and how you can best prepare yourself for those and be kind to yourself in those.
Be still, my soul. The Lord is on your side. Bear patiently the cross of grief or pain. Leave to your God to order and provide. In every change, God faithful will remain. Be still, my soul, your best, your heavenly friend, through thorny ways, leads to a joyful end. Be still, my soul, the hour is hastening on, when we shall be forever with the Lord. When disappointment, grief and fear are gone, sorrow forgot, love's purest joys restored. Be still, my soul, when change and tears are past. All safe and blessed, we shall meet at last.
Higher than the mountains that I face, stronger than the power of the grave, constant through the trial and the change, this one thing remains, this one thing remains. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love. Because on and on and on and on it goes. Yes, it overwhelms and satisfies my soul. And I never ever have to be afraid. This one thing remains. This one thing remains. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, and never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love. Your love. 'Cause in death, in life, I'm confident and covered by the power of your great love. My debt is paid. There's nothing that could separate my heart from your great love. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, and never runs out on me.